Hello, I'm Chris Hartwell, and welcome to The Heartbeat, the place where I talk about just a few of the things that make this little guy tick. Today, we're going to be talking about Episode 2 of Season 2 of HBO's The Leftovers. Join me, won't you? Cool, so just like usual, I intend to talk about the positives and the negatives of this episode, as well as a few of the things I'm looking forward to next week on The Leftovers. However, I wanted to start this episode by talking a little bit about the opening credits sequence, and actually defending it, because I've heard a lot of comments from different people on comment boards and on blog posts, just how much they hated the opening credits, and I, for one, really enjoyed it. Now, let me just say, first of all, I still do prefer the opening title sequence from Season 1. I really thought they were epic and iconic and absolutely grabbed my attention in an awesome way. But that's not to say that I didn't enjoy the Season 2 credits as well. And there are a couple reasons why I really did enjoy them. And it's one of those situations where some people have been positing that this is Damon Lindelof's very clear and explicit way of saying, we're not going to give you the answer to what happened to the 2%. And though that certainly does seem to be one of the elements, I also found it really interesting reading a quote from Damon Lindelof where he said, "It was really important to us that we didn't generate Season 2 of The Leftovers as an apology for Season 1 or as a course correction." And for me, the Season 2 title really doesn't feel like it was an apology or a course correction, but rather a natural evolution. For me, Season 1 of The Leftovers was really about what tore a family apart and the specific wedges that were driven between each of those individuals to push them away from one another. And I really did think the opening credits of Season 1 played specifically into that, visually representing the primary wedge that pushed those people apart, that being the terrifying, earth-shattering, larger-than-life sudden departure. Whereas the first season was really about what tore a family apart, the second season really seems to be about bringing a family together and asking the question, what does it take to form a family after this really tragic event? And again, the opening credits really seem to play into that. There is that sense of longing and letting things be and moving on and moving forwards, and how these specific individuals can come together as a family unit. Also, the opening title sequence of any television show really does inform us, the viewer, what that television show is going to be about and what ideas it's going to explore. And though I do genuinely feel like Tom Perotta and Damon Lindelof's writing is strong enough to comment on things that are as archetypal and as mythic as the images found in the opening credits of Season 1, the second season and the opening title sequence along with it really does seem to be focusing specifically on these characters. Real people with real faces, with real backstories, with real fears that we can relate to and get inside of. To make a silly comparison, The Leftovers is not Roland Emmerich's Independence Day, where the main characters are the ones at the center of the conflict trying to resolve this global crisis. It's instead Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds, with these characters who are actually kind of in the midst of this swirling tornado of chaos, but more than anything just trying to survive and keep their family together. And it's also cool to hear about the fact that Lindelof is a lot more inspired by Parenthood and Friday Night Lights than Twin Peaks for the second season. And if you look at both the opening title sequence for Friday Night Lights and especially for Parenthood, you can definitely see those inspirations playing into the opening title sequence. But enough on the opening credits and why I think those work. Let's talk about this week's specific episode, a matter of geography, and why I think this week's episode works and what are a few of the positives from it. More than anything, I think I was once again shown that Perotta and Lindelof really have a handle on this story and how it's evolving and how it's progressing in such a natural, excellent way. It was really fascinating reading that quote from Lindelof where he said, one of the things that I don't want people to do when they watch this show is call BS on it and say, that doesn't feel real to me. And I really do feel like that goal was met on last week's episode, but most especially on this week's episode. Because this week, Lindelof and Perotta had the really challenging goal of wrapping up a few things from Season 1 and then pushing forwards in a big way into Season 2. So we have plot points like the fact that Kevin and Nora end up staying together, or the fact that they end up adopting the baby, or even huge moments where Kevin decides to unearth Patty's body and gets caught for it. And each time anything like that occurred, I had two distinct thoughts. One was, Perotta, Lindelof, I see what you guys are doing. Very sneaky. You are wrapping up that Season 1 plotline and pushing forwards in a big way into Season 2 with new characters, new plotlines. But also, I can't reject that because it doesn't feel contrived and it doesn't feel forced. In fact, it feels very natural to who these characters are and what they specifically want. And this speaks directly to some of the concerns that I had about the second season, which was an ignoring of or pushing past some of the unresolved plot lines from Season 1. So sure, they did quite quickly resolve that external conflict of will Patty's body ever be discovered, but internally things are in no way resolved. And in fact, the external kind of resolution only makes things worse internally. And speaking of Kevin and things getting worse for him, I just love the way that his character was handled this episode and the way that Lindelof and Perotta chose to write his arc, and it just felt so Lindelof to me. So we had this kind of recurring motif of him putting the headphones in and trying to ignore stuff. And though initially it felt like, oh, he's trying to ignore the baby, or maybe he's ignoring Nora or Jill, Ultimately, you find out it's actually Patty he's trying to tune out, and she's actually been there this whole time trying to break through to him. And it really does feel like this whole season 2, for Garvey anyways, will be focused on him trying to excise that Patty demon, or perhaps embrace her as Garvey Sr. would have him do. And there were honestly just so many great character moments all throughout this episode. I absolutely love the moment where Kevin and Nora went to the adoptions agency and were trying to adopt Lily officially. And the social worker asked them, so if you guys split up, where will the baby go? And they both kind of emphatically said, we're not going to separate. And that was just this really heartbreaking moment and reminder of how broken these people are and how desperate they are to hold on to this new family. Also, I love the moment where Kevin has to drop his dog off at the kennel. For me, the whole relationship between his dog and him really does say a lot about Kevin and the fact that he's trying to tame this wild beast within as well as this wild beast without. And the moment where he's forced to give up the dog really does seem to say, he's starting to lose a grip on his own sanity again, and things are about to get a little bit crazy for him. And of course, I have to mention the phenomenal scene between Kevin and Nora where they kind of spill their deepest, darkest secrets to one another. And Kevin kind of starts out by saying, you know what, you really don't actually know me all that well, and I sort of sleepwalk. And, I was there when Patty killed herself, and I buried the body. And then Nora comes back with, I hire prostitutes to shoot myself. And then the scene ends with that beautiful zinger of Kevin saying, and I smoke. And even the scene ends with one of the characters saying, it's okay. It's okay. You really do get the feeling that, you know what, you guys did resolve things externally, but internally things are just as broken and just as messed up. And this connects directly back to what we were talking about a moment ago with Kevin thinking he could resolve the whole issue with Patty just by unearthing her and getting himself arrested. And it was kind of like the showrunner saying, you know what, that would be the easy way out for Kevin, and we're not going to make it that simple for him this second season. Also, another great thing that the showrunners did, and I really did appreciate, was the scene between Nora and the guys who were buying her house. For me, it didn't feel like the show was saying we're going to provide those answers. It was simply giving a rounded picture of, yes, there are people in this world who are seeking to know what happened to that 2%. And then that segued into the fact that she got almost $3 million for her house back in Mapleton, and then used $3 million to buy her house over in Miracle. And that definitely also has to lead me to talk about the other amazing scene, which is the auction scene. There was just, again, this situation of the writers, boom, pushing this plot forwards. We need to get them in this town, we need to have them own this house, but also it makes complete sense with who Nora is. To have that desperation, that need to move on, the need to get away, the need to feel settled and to feel safe again. And the final really amazing thing about this episode is it does something that only television and film can really do properly, which is tell the same story, but from a different point of view. It was, for me, so cool, the moment where Kevin walks out of his car, and you see the exact same moment where John sees Kevin for the first time, except it's from Kevin's perspective. And it did kind of in a fun way remind me of Back to the Future 2, where we're seeing the exact same moment from the first film, except just seeing it from a different perspective, and allowing that different perspective to give us a deeper understanding of that moment. Now to talk about a few of the things that I felt didn't work from this episode. Though this one's very small, it was unfortunate that it happened right at the very top of the episode. The music from the previously on The Leftovers was just so synthy and so cheesy. It just didn't seem to fit the tone of The Leftovers at all, and I didn't enjoy that. Also, I've complimented numerous times in this review just how much I enjoyed the sense of urgency in this episode and how much I enjoyed the forward progression and the natural forward progression that happened. Nonetheless, I felt like there were a couple casualties that happened because of that. For me, the scene between Jill and Tom just felt a little bit too neat, a little bit too tied up. Like it was a situation of, yes, we need to have these two characters come together and connect, but we can't have them stay together. And it felt just a little bit forced because of that. Additionally, I really enjoyed the scene between Garvey Sr. and Kevin, but for me, if that was the last time that we ever see Garvey Sr., I'll be a little bit disappointed. But now, to talk about things I'm looking forward to next week, to be completely obvious, I'm really looking forward to finding out what's going on with Kevin. Am I in fact assuming correctly when I theorize that Kevin himself tied the cinder block to his leg and tried to drown himself in the creek? And is that also the catalyst for the water leaving the creek, like some sort of higher power is refusing to let him die? Also, is he really insane? Is he really just guilt-ridden? Or is Patty actually there? Is she some sort of demon or angel that actually is haunting him? And again, for my money, I really hope it is that situation. I love the dynamic that we see between the characters of Gaius Baltar and Six in the show Battlestar Galactica, and I think it'd be so cool to have that sort of dynamic between Patty and Kevin in this show as well. Though, please, for the love of goodness, let it be less seductive. Also, just to point out a couple great mysterious lines that were said, there was the moment between Garvey Sr. and Kevin where Garvey Sr. says, "I could sit around and cry about how the world ended, or I could start it up again." Or the very mysterious, slightly creepy moment when the character walks up to Garvey in kind of the migrant camp and says, "I can help you with your situation." And actually, in a really cool way, these last two episodes of The Leftovers reminded me of two episodes from Lost Season 5, titled LaFleur and 316. And in those episodes, we have these two distinct groups of characters, which end up at the end of each of the episodes meeting in the same place. In the same way, we have the Murphys and the Garveys finally meeting together at the end of this episode once again. And so now, in a very exciting way, the next episode will be them moving forwards together and approaching this conflict, but coming from very different places. Another storyline that I think next week's going to explore and I'm really excited about is Tom and Laurie's storyline. And it's interesting because in that situation, both those characters come from kind of similar backgrounds, that being both of them were rather burned by a cult. One of them quite literally. That was good. But nonetheless, I am excited to see how those two characters interact with one another and where their storyline is going. And more than anything, what makes me excited for next week and all the episodes that follow after that is actually a quote that I read from Damon Lindelof, which was, "All I can say is, there is a design to it. But for me to reveal that design completely diminishes it. I do hope when the season is over, or when the series is over, there'll be even more perspective to discuss." And the reason that quote excites me and brings me so much joy and makes me all the more interested to see all the future episodes is because I, like the characters on the show, want to feel safe in watching it. Because I want to watch things like the opening sequence this season and know it wasn't just put in there arbitrarily. And no, it wasn't just put in there to make me go, WTF, with no intention, no purpose, and no understanding of what it really means. And even if they never ever tell me their intention or purpose, just knowing that they have one allows me to excitedly come on here and posit my theories and happily invest my time and my heart into this show. Anyways, those are my thoughts on this week's episode. I would love to know you guys' thoughts, so please do comment below. Let me know what was exciting about this episode, what worked for you, what didn't. What are you looking forward to next week? Has your opinion changed at all on the opening credits? Please do comment below and let me know. Also, please do subscribe. I will be continuing to review films and television on this channel, and I would love for you to join me and stay up to date on all of those things. But, for now, I'm Chris Hartwell. This is The Heartbeat. I thank you for joining me.